The first time I heard my son call another man Dad, I dropped the wrench in my hand, and it clanged against the concrete like a gunshot. My palms went numb. My ears rang. I stood frozen in the garage, covered in oil and disbelief, listening to Jacob's voice echo from the iPad. My name's Ben. I'm 40. A car mechanic from a small town in Minnesota. I've got calloused hands, a straight spine, and until recently, I thought I had a family. My wife, Ashley, was everything I wasn't: lively, talkative, always pulling people in like a flame. We met at a vintage car show in Duluth. She was wearing a cherry red sundress, white sunglasses on her head, and she was arguing with her boyfriend, loudly, publicly, humiliatingly. He told her she was just a pretty face with no brain. I offered her a ride home. She never went back to him. A year later, she told me she was pregnant. A miracle, she called it. Doctors had told her she couldn't have kids. I didn't question it. I was in love with the dream. A family. A future. But Jacob, he never looked like me. Blonde curls. Green eyes. And dimples no one in either of our families had. Still, I smiled through it. Bought the crib, painted the nursery, built his first wooden toy car with my own hands. When I jokingly said, "He looks like the mailman," Ashley's face darkened. "Why are you always so toxic?" she snapped. "You're starting to sound like my ex." So I let it go. I told myself love was more important than biology. But years passed, and Ashley changed. The warmth that once poured out of her turned cold. She started managing my schedule, questioning every dollar I spent, monitoring who I talked to. Even time with Jacob had to be cleared with her. And somehow, I was always in the wrong. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Jacob sat in the kitchen with his iPad, giggling. I leaned in to kiss his head. And I heard it. A voice from the screen said, "I miss you, buddy. Can't wait to see you next week." And Jacob, without thinking, replied, "Miss you too, Dad." I nearly dropped the coffee mug. I waited until Jacob left the room, then grabbed the iPad. The call history was wiped. But I knew what I heard. And then my real hell had just begun. I sat in the garage that night, staring at the engine of a '68 Mustang I'd been working on for weeks. But my hands weren't steady. My thoughts kept replaying that moment, Jacob, calling some stranger, Dad. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a game. Maybe it was a character from a show. Maybe I misheard. Maybe. But that maybe kept choking me like exhaust in a sealed shop. I didn't say anything to Ashley. Not that night. Not the next. Instead, I started watching. Listening. Piecing things together. There were moments I'd ignored before. The day we heard Jacob's heartbeat for the first time. The doctor muttered something I brushed off. "Strange," he said. "Gestational age suggests 8 weeks, not 5. Ashley had gripped my hand tighter. I was too busy smiling to catch the tension in her jaw. Then there was the call to the maternity ward 3 days after Jacob was born. A man called saying he was Ashley's brother. But Ashley had always told me she was an only child. Just me, she'd said, a miracle kid from a lonely mother. I asked her about it once, offhandedly. She got cold fast. "You think I'm lying about my own family?" I apologized. Again. Like always. I started digging. Quietly. I went through old photos, phone records, messages. Nothing blatant. Nothing I could hold in my hand and say, "Here. Proof." But something wasn't right. It was like the truth was hovering just beyond my reach, wearing Ashley's perfume and smiling like she did when she wanted something. And then came the iPad. Jacob left it on the couch one evening and went to bed. I picked it up to check his YouTube history, just being a dad. Instead, I found messages. Dozens of them. A thread with someone named Travis. A man I'd never heard of. Ashley had sent him pictures. Of Jacob. One of them had a caption that read, "Your twin." The pit in my stomach went cold. My thumb hovered over the delete button. But I didn't press it. I couldn't. I started keeping notes. Dates. Screenshots. I printed a few out. Hid them in my tool chest under the air filter box. That's when I knew, I needed answers, not apologies. So I ordered a DNA test. I swabbed Jacob's cheek one morning while he was still sleepy, claiming it was a tooth game. He giggled, trusting me completely. That hurt the most. I mailed the kit that afternoon. But a week later, when I checked the mailbox, all I found was a torn, blackened envelope, edges singed like it had been half-burned. The only thing left was the barcode sticker. No result. No papers. I stormed inside. Ashley was standing near the fireplace. She didn't flinch. "I know what you're doing," she said softly, like she'd just read my thoughts. I stared at her. Her blonde hair was messy, her silk robe barely tied, her face calm, too calm. "He's not yours," she said, finally. "But I can't prove anything without you. So you'll stay silent. Or I'll say you hit me. I already have the photos." My mouth went dry. "I've never." "I know," she cut me off, cold. "But who will they believe?" That's when I realized I wasn't living with a wife. I was living with someone who had written an entire script, and cast me as the villain. The next morning, I bought a voice recorder. Hid it in my toolbox. I backed up every message. Started pretending like nothing had changed. But inside, something had snapped. She thought I'd stay quiet. She thought I'd be too scared to fight. She was wrong. I've always believed a man should know his tools better than his fears. But the moment I saw that message, "He looks just like you," I knew I was in way over my head. It was from Ashley's old tablet, the one she claimed was dead years ago. She gave it to Jacob to play games. But one night, he fell asleep with it still in his hands. Out of habit, I plugged it in, and it lit up, still synced to her email. There were hundreds of archived threads. Some were innocent. Grocery lists. PDA stuff. But one name kept popping up, Travis. I didn't recognize him. But the messages. They weren't just old flames or playful exchanges. They were full-blown, decade-long love letters. Pictures. Video clips. Flirty nicknames. And photos of my son. Travis wrote things like, "When are you going to tell him? I miss seeing Jacob's face every morning. You promised we'd leave by the time he turns 5. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. She had lied to both of us. She hadn't just kept secrets, she built a parallel life. One where I was the placeholder. The prop. The man she used until she was ready to move on. But Travis, he wasn't gone. The timestamps on the emails were recent. Every time Ashley claimed she was at yoga or seeing a friend, she'd been slipping out to meet him. And the most gut-wrenching part? Some messages were sent while I was home with Jacob. I felt like a ghost in my own house. There was one message that made me pause longer than the rest. "You're right. He doesn't deserve to know. Let him think he's the father. Just until we figure out what to do." I closed the tablet. My hands were shaking. But I didn't cry. Instead, I started remembering. Small things. Sharp things. The day Jacob called Travis Dad. The time Ashley forgot her phone at home and drove an hour to the city, only to come back with groceries from a store that doesn't exist in that direction. The way Jacob would sometimes hum a lullaby I'd never taught him. She was slipping. I was watching. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed leverage. Proof. Not just for me, but for Jacob. Because even if he wasn't mine by blood, he was still my boy. So I played the role. The quiet husband. The dull mechanic. The man who made too much noise with his wrench but not with his words. Ashley didn't suspect a thing. But I noticed she changed the passcode on her phone. She moved money into an account I didn't recognize. And every time she looked at me, it was like she saw a man she'd already buried. Then came the night I heard them. I had installed a small baby monitor in the hallway, claiming it was for Jacob's nightmares. But it picked up voices. Not just Jacob's. Ashley. Laughing. And a man, his voice low, familiar, intimate. "You shouldn't talk so loud," she whispered. He chuckled. "You think he's listening? I think he's smarter than you give him credit for." The next sound. The creak of the couch. A soft sigh. A kiss. I felt physically sick. I sat on the floor of the garage, wrapped in my old army jacket, eyes burning from the cold and the truth. She was cheating under my roof. In my home. While I fixed the brakes on her car. While I packed Jacob's lunch. While I built our life, one bolt, one check, one broken promise at a time. That night, I didn't sleep. I just listened. And then I made the choice that changed everything. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those evenings where everything feels quiet in the wrong way. No wind. No crickets. Just a stillness that presses against your skin. Ashley had said she was going to her friend's essential oils class. She left wearing a light beige cardigan, heels, and that rose gold pendant she only wore when she wanted attention. Her perfume lingered long after the door shut, a soft, sweet trail of jasmine and something sharper, like citrus. I didn't follow her. I waited. 2 hours later, I drove to the address I'd found on her GPS history. It was in a condo complex near the lake. She'd been there before, 3 times in the past month. Always on a Thursday. I parked a block away. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The building was lit softly from the inside, warm light leaking from the blinds of the 3rd floor. I stood under a tree across the street, wrapped in the dark, hidden by the night. That's when I saw her silhouette. Ashley. Laughing. She moved across the room like she belonged there. She poured 2 glasses of wine and curled up on the couch next to a man with a shaved head and a familiar profile, Travis. He ran a hand down her arm. She leaned in. The way she touched his face, it was tender. Intimate. Like they had a history no one else was supposed to see. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She smiled. Then he pulled her into his lap. The curtains were sheer, just enough to blur the details, but not enough to erase the truth. I saw her mouth move. Words I couldn't hear, but could imagine. "I missed you." She kissed him, slowly. Her hand resting against his chest like it had found home. His fingers slid beneath the strap of her cardigan, baring her shoulder. She tilted her head and let it fall back, laughing again, as if she was finally free. It wasn't the physical betrayal that broke me. It was the expression on her face. She looked alive. Alive in a way she hadn't looked in our house for years. Like the woman I met at the car show, vibrant, electric, real. The woman who once danced barefoot in our kitchen to Springsteen. The woman who cried when I proposed to her in the back of my pickup truck under fireworks. I realized in that moment, she'd never stopped being her. She had just stopped being her with me. The weight of it hit me so hard I had to sit on the curb. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just stared at the windows until the light dimmed, until shadows moved toward the bedroom, until the laughter faded into silence. Then I drove home. Slowly. Numb. When I walked in, Jacob's nightlight was still glowing. His blanket was halfway off. I tucked him in gently, and he smiled in his sleep. "Night, Dad," he mumbled. I stood there for a long time, staring at him. "My boy. My son, regardless of DNA." I whispered, "I'm still here." But inside, something had cracked. The man who ignored the signs was gone. The man who was used had just woken up. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that night. I kept going through the motions, showing up at the shop, changing brakes, rotating tires, pretending the world hadn't collapsed beneath me. But inside, it was hollow. Everything felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. Ashley came home like nothing happened. She even kissed my cheek the next morning, like her lips hadn't just belonged to someone else. Like the truth wasn't still hanging in the folds of her cardigan. I started seeing the cracks everywhere. The way she flinched when I walked in unexpectedly. How she checked her phone like it was a lifeline. Her fake concern, "Are you okay? You look tired lately." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Played dumb. Because now, I had something bigger to fight for. Jacob. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting the only innocent person in this entire mess. I didn't care about proving I was right anymore. I cared about making sure that boy grew up knowing he was loved by someone who chose him, every day, no matter what. So I got smart. I stopped reacting and started planning. I installed a hidden app on the old iPad to mirror Ashley's phone. Bought a second voice recorder and hid it under the living room shelf. Every girls' night out, I logged the time she left and where she went. Every conversation I had with her, I recorded. She once told me I was too quiet lately. I said, just tired. But the truth was, I was waiting. And then came the second DNA test. I didn't send this one to my house. I sent it to my brother, Marcus, who's a lawyer in St. Paul. Trusted. Discreet. Loyal. He collected Jacob's swab during a weekend visit. I told Jacob it was a science project. He laughed and called it gross. That laugh felt like salvation. 2 weeks later, the results came in. Not a match. Not even close. I stared at the paper in my brother's office. My name under, alleged father. The conclusion in bold. Probability of paternity, 0%. The final nail. The next step was filing a petition in family court. I wasn't just challenging paternity, I was fighting for custody. I knew she'd come at me like fire, with lies, with manipulation, with whatever cards she had left. I didn't care. Because I had truth. And I had Jacob. But what I didn't expect, what no one saw coming, was Travis. Ashley must have panicked. Maybe she thought I'd back down. Maybe she called him for support. But instead, he showed up in court, and did something she never expected. He sat on the stand, avoided eye contact with her, and admitted everything. He was the biological father. He was married. He had another family. And he wanted nothing to do with Jacob. He said, word for word, I tried to pay her to keep this quiet. I never signed up for fatherhood. I'm not involved, and I don't want to be. The courtroom went dead silent. Ashley didn't even look at him. She just stared at the floor, hands shaking. I should have felt victorious. But I didn't. I felt emptied. Like everything I believed had finally unraveled. Like there was no more hiding, no more lies, just a raw, unbearable truth. And then Jacob stood up. He wasn't supposed to speak. But he tugged at the judge's robe and said softly, "Can I say something?" The judge nodded. And my son, my boy, looked right at me. What he said changed everything. Jacob's voice was small, but it filled the courtroom like thunder. "I know he's not my real dad," he said, pointing to me. "But he's the only one who stayed." There was a long pause. No one breathed. Not even the judge. Ashley looked up, her face pale, eyes wide in disbelief. Travis shifted in his seat. I stood there frozen, every muscle tense, my heart somewhere between shattering and healing. "He took me fishing," Jacob continued. "He taught me how to ride a bike. He comes to all my soccer games, even the ones where we lose." His voice cracked. "He's my dad. Not because of blood. But because he never left." Ashley's jaw twitched. For the first time since the mess began, she looked afraid. Not smug. Not cold. Just, exposed. I think she finally realized her lies couldn't win here. The judge looked at her and asked, "Do you dispute this man's role as the primary father figure?" Ashley didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. I took a breath. My hands were shaking, but I reached into the file folder I brought and handed the judge a flash drive. "I've documented everything," I said, my voice steady. "Every conversation. Every message. Every instance where she tried to alienate me or threaten me into silence. Including the night she told me, 'You'll stay quiet, or I'll say you hit me.' I already have the photos." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge looked at the flash drive, then at Ashley. Her silence spoke louder than any words. In that moment, the mask fell. No more perfect wife. No more loving mother. Just a woman caught in her own web, still trying to hold on, but with nothing left to grip. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. I didn't know how to fix it. But it was too late for that." The judge ruled that I would retain full legal and physical custody of Jacob. Ashley would have to petition for supervised visitation, if and when she could prove her fitness as a parent. Travis left the courtroom before the gavel fell. Didn't even look back. Ashley? She disappeared 2 weeks later. No goodbye. No apology. No attempt to reach out to Jacob. Just, gone. One of her coworkers said she was pregnant again. A new start, I guess. But this time, I wasn't part of the lie. Jacob and I moved into a new place, smaller, quieter, but filled with peace. He still calls me Dad. Every day. Sometimes I catch him staring at our framed photo from that fishing trip, the one where he's missing 2 front teeth and I'm sunburnt like a lobster. He laughs when he sees it. And I do too. Because that photo, it's real. Unlike everything she tried to build on lies.